Welcome to the Uncontested Investing Show, presented by REI Inc. magazine and sponsored by RCN Capital. Each week, we focus on bringing you candid convos from the best in the biz. Here's your host, Tim Harridge.
Welcome back to Uncontested Investing. I'm Tim Harridge. Thank you so much for swinging back by. Today, I'm with Blake Carter. Blake, thanks for being here.
Thank you for having me.
So we're connected through the boardroom, a mastermind that I'm a part of. But for the sake of the audience, why don't you just tell them a little bit about yourself?
Yeah. My name is Blake Carter. Blake Anthony Carter is where you can find me on social media. But I am the co-founder of a company called CRIBS. It stands for Creative Real Estate Investment Business Solutions. And we specialize in creative methods that allow investors to cash flow in expensive markets. It's kind of a mouthful. But anyways, my full story, I guess I can start with my background. I've been involved in real estate for pretty much my entire life.
Which you're only 26, so we're not talking about a whole lot. No, I'm kidding.
But my mom was actually a partner in a successful mobile home retail business and flipping business when I was a kid down in Georgetown. And basically grew up around that, learned all about lending and how to rehab a house and how to negotiate, and just grew up around that. And so it's all I've ever been around. After 2008, the financial crisis, long story short, the business went down. Our lives were turned upside down. We ended up losing pretty much everything. And we were actually deemed homeless by the city of Austin for 2 years due to having unstable housing and unstable income. And through that whole experience, I always say I'm super blessed that I got to go through something like that. It was just a ton of learning lessons and a real opportunity to see the power of real estate, the good and the bad, when things can go good, when they don't. But after that, was a little bit hesitant to get into real estate professionally after I left high school. I didn't go to college or anything, and
I went for a week.
That's good. Oh, I should say I went to community college for like a week as well, but it wasn't for me. And so got into real estate eventually, decided to go in after just being scared for a couple years due to what I had been through. Started with property management. So I got in through property management, just like working as like a leasing agent at your local apartment complex, and worked my way up in that world pretty much as you can. My last position held was I was the national leasing director for CWS Apartment Homes. And essentially I was like their road BITCH. Essentially they would send me around different properties throughout their whole portfolio. I would fix problems, train staff, and that was about all I did. That was a great learning experience, but eventually got my real estate license a few years ago, and I was working for a local management company and helping them on their management side and helping them sell some real estate too. It was just kind of learning. And I was handling any of their new business development. A gentleman contacted us one time, and he wanted us to manage 3 properties of his that were rented out by the room, and asked if it's something that we'd be willing to do. And I said, sure, we'll do that. Brought that to the owner of the company. She said, hell no, we are not doing that. We're not touching that. I don't know what that is. And so I had to go back and tell him that we can't do that, of course. It's like 8 weeks later, he ends up calling me separately and is like, hey man, will you just do this on the side? Like, will you just help me out? I don't really know what I'm doing. I don't understand any of this. I don't want to talk to tenants. And I said, sure. Like, I need the extra money. And that started me down the rabbit hole of a method that we now call co-living. And then he ended up referring me to other investors that were doing the same thing. I was managing their properties. One of those investors asked me one day if we did short-term rentals, like Airbnbs. And I was like, yeah, we do that. Sure. Yeah, we sure do. And I literally I had him on speaker. I was Googling how much do short-term rental management companies charge. I literally had no clue what we were doing. I was just saying yes to an opportunity. And that led me down to the other rabbit holes, learning all about short-term rentals. And my partner, Jeremy, he was also in property management, and he specialized in student housing, which a lot of that is renting out by the room. And so he had already had a lot of experience in the space. And so I brought him in to help with a lot of the operations. He also has a huge passion for design. And I was selling a lot of these types of properties at that point, a lot of the co-living type properties and short-term rentals, because people want to invest in Austin and areas all around Texas. But the hard part is how do you make a cash flow?
Right.
So I had kind of that solution. We were selling them, and then managing them. A lot of people do that, right? I had a lot of connections through like flips I had done on my own and just through the general property management world, a lot of contractors, subcontractors. And so I started helping my clients rehab these properties as well. And Jeremy, having that passion for design, ended up helping with like the furnishing and getting the property set up. And so we realized that we kind of had a real business here where people can come to us and we're basically their one-stop shop. Right. So they come to us and we built this concept of cribs around being a turnkey real estate solution for investors. Started in Austin, but now we're branching out in a bunch of markets in Texas.
Well, I've got a lot of questions about that, but first, every week we start with the bottom line up front. So imagine there's someone out there, they're listening to this, they're interested in real estate or investing or starting their own business. Take 2 minutes and just talk about, in your experience, things that people should be looking at, avoiding, focusing on, and where their attention should be, and what you think the most important thing is going into 2023 and beyond. You good to go?
Yeah, absolutely.
Go.
I would say right now people should be focusing on understanding what their exit strategies are and ensuring that they have multiple exit strategies in a property. We work with a lot of flippers right now, people that are purchasing properties to rehab them to then eventually sell. And as the market has stalled a little bit, they found that maybe they can't offload these properties quite as easily, or if they do offload, they're going to lose a lot of money. And so they're having to pivot. So understanding that exit strategy going into the deal is important, but also having multiple exit strategies. I think as we go forward into the future of the real estate market, having a utility belt of different options that you can go with. It's not as easy nowadays to just buy a house and rent it out, unfortunately. High interest rates, inflation, all that has affected the ability to cash flow on real estate. And so I think people should be thinking about not just if this house doesn't sell, but my different options to create income on this property if the house doesn't sell. We have a lot of people that are doing short-term rentals, and maybe those aren't working out as much as they had thought because the market is saturated. So understanding what your other options, how you can still make money on that property, even if your first, second, or third strategy does not work out.
All right, so that's great because personally, when you go back 20-something years, I started out buying these houses for $40,000, $50,000, $60,000, $70,000, $80,000 that we were renting out for $1,000, $1,100, $1,200. The 1% rule, as everyone says, and it was pretty easy to cash flow. But the problem is when you start with low numbers, right? If you just look at compounded appreciation, you're going to get to the big number you want to reach at the end much, much slower. Yeah. And so it was probably in 2018 when my wife and I started selling some of the owner finance notes that we'd kept during the Great Depression because it was the only way to make money in real estate. And we started saying, okay, wait, we need to buy nicer houses, right? We need to, even if we put more money down, right? We need to get bigger assets, more stable communities. And we would refinance or sell houses or sell notes. And then with the advent of Airbnb, I won't say the advent of the short-term rental industry because, somebody on the show said that, Jesus Christ was the first Airbnb guest, right? Like, when they show up in town, like, do you have a room to rent? And like, no, you can go out there, though, and I'll rent you the barn for the night. Yeah. So it's one of those things that's been around forever. But, these large tech platforms are kind of, I'd say, standardizing it, definitely making it more well-known. And then we started doing that. And it's like, oh, wait, now all of a sudden this $400,000 or $500,000 house, you can make enough money to where you're not putting $100,000 or $200,000 down on it. You're actually still at that, 70, 80% loan to value, but you're actually cash flowing. And then even more recently, we found midterm rentals. Yep. Which, holy geez. I mean, I got a house I have a house in Rockwall, Texas right now that the monthly rent on that house would be $2,500 to $3,500 depending. Now it is furnished and we pay the utilities, but we're getting $12,500 a month.
Yeah.
So cash flow wise, yeah, I mean, that equals, what is it? It's probably equal to 12 rental properties.
Yeah.
Right. And it's a $600,000 house that if I make 3% on it every year, right, I would have to have $600,000 houses or, four $450,000. So it's been interesting to see that. And I've got a lot of questions I want to ask you, but we're going to take a break real quick. And then I want to dig into your story more. So stick around. We'll be right back.
Are you looking for fast funding for your next fix and flip? What about leverage for your next long-term rental or vacation rental? Need capital for a new construction project? Look no further. RCN Capital has you covered. As the leading nationwide lender for real estate investors, RCN Capital offers short-term and long-term financing solutions for your next investment property. RCN Capital takes a common-sense approach to your loan request, offering high leverages and low rates backed by superior customer service. Whether you're investing in single-family properties or multifamily properties across the U.S., RCN Capital has funding options for you with no hoops to jump through and quick closings in as little as 2 weeks. Ready to get a quote for your next investment property? Visit rcncapital.com/podcast to apply today. There is no fee to apply. Again, that's rcncapital.com/podcast to apply today.
Welcome back to Uncontested Investing. I'm Tim Harris. I'm still here with Blake. Blake, I want to talk about cash flow. I have been fortunate enough about 10 years ago, I helped create kind of the DSCR business for investors at RCN Capital. We just won DSCR Lender of the Year last year from the IMN conference. So cash flow is at the crux of almost every loan we originate to investors long-term. And I tell investors, we never looked at short-term rental income numbers until about May of 2021. I actually closed one of the first DSCR loans that RCN did as a borrower on a short-term rental I have down in San Antonio. And so right now, most lenders aren't looking at short-term rental data. And a lot of it is because the back-end capital, the capital markets, that they haven't seen institutional level data on how these assets will perform in a recessionary environment. Yeah. And we're going into a recessionary environment. I mean, recession or not, it's going to be, I think, location dependent. But ultimately, we're going into a recessionary environment, so the capital markets are pulling back. The good news is companies like Airbnb, Vrbo, Booking.com, they're big public companies that have reporting, right? So Airbnb earnings, we can see the average nightly rate, right? We can see a lot of information. So I think what's going to happen in this is bold prediction, next 6 to 12 months, I think the capital markets will be like, hey, you know what? We're going to go ahead and start using that data again, because this is it stood the test, right? It wasn't just a pandemic fad, right? But what have you seen, now that you've worked with some of these investors, I'd imagine have been doing this forever, right? And they've taught you things. What are some things that you've learned about short-term, mid-term, stay by the night, et cetera?
I would say for someone that's getting into short-term rentals, mid-term rentals, like you mentioned, it's really understanding that there's an actual business aspect to it aside from the real estate, because I see a lot of really great real estate investors get mixed into short-term rentals and don't succeed. And it's because there is a very different way of operating a short-term rental or a mid-term rental.
Because you're in the hospitality business at that point, right?
And you're in the hospitality business, and that's it exactly. It's essentially like a different type of business. It is not a long-term rental. You're not just putting a tenant in there and hoping they don't call you for 12 months. It's day in, day out. Like, things are operating. You're having to go fix little pieces of furniture and respond to guests in a timely manner and ensure that the place smells good and the lawn is mowed. And there's a lot more to it than just finding someone to pay their rent, right? So understanding and learning about the business of hospitality and the business of short-term rentals before you jump right into it is really, really important.
What's been some of the major operational hurdles that you've had to overcome?
A lot. That's
Oh, I know, because I'm doing it every day with my wife.
Understanding your management system. So that's the biggest thing I tell like new short-term rental investors is that even if you just have one property, you need to get involved with some kind of PMS. Whether you're just starting off like at a base level, the easiest one is Hospitable. It's almost free. It's very, very cheap. You can sync all your calendars together. All your messaging will be in one place. You can keep up to date on like any kind of maintenance items. If you have about 1 to 5 properties, I would say Hospitable is plenty robust. And then once you get above 5 properties, like for example, we have 42 properties that we operate. You want to get into something that's a little bit more intensive. We use a system called Guesty, but there's plenty of really, really awesome systems. There's OwnerRez, there's Hostfully. You can find all this.
What made you pick Guesty?
In my opinion, Guesty is kind of the premier short-term rental management platform. It is the most expensive, but it's 100% the best. I mean, one thing that you'll notice with Hospitable, for example, if someone were to start with Hospitable and say they have 4 or 5 listings, the integrations aren't very efficient sometimes. Like you might get a message from VRBO and you might not see that message on Hospitable for 5 to 10 minutes. And that can get really, really cloudy when you start getting into the world of 20, 30 plus properties. Your integrations get really, really shady and really, really sketchy. And so integrations is a huge one. Also accounting is a really big one. Hospitable and some of these more basic management platforms don't have very good accounting systems. And as you know, like we're in tax season, like that stuff is very, very important. And honestly, between accounting and integrations, those are the main reasons why we went with Guesty.
So I heard someone at the boardroom mention Guesty. I guess it may have been you, and I signed up.
Nice.
And I've loved it, mainly because before I was not on Booking.com.
Yes.
Right. And because a lot of the platforms don't have that. And the way I look at it is, okay, if I'm watching TV, right, who is advertising the most? Right? And clearly it's Booking.com, right? I mean, they even have bowl games named after them, right? And so that was kind of like I was like, man, I need to get my assets there. And one of my struggles has been with property management, mainly because at the beginning, my wife has all this sweat equity into these houses, and she really cares about the design and the furniture and the experience. And but when we have a week like last week where she and I were in Manhattan for her birthday and having a good party and not necessarily answering our phones, it can be a bit hairy. But then you talk to managers and it's 20%, it's 30%, it's 10%, or they, oh, well, we're going to get 400 or 500 a night for that one. And you're thinking, well, I've never been able to get over 200. So like, what's your secret sauce? And then they try for a couple months and you basically get a couple bookings at 400, but it's vacant 80% of the month. And you're kind of like, well, I mean, I'm running a cash flow business, right? And how do you address that from a business practices as the manager?
We have very, very similar questions with a lot of our clients that we are the management company for them. There's a lot of back and forth between what they think the property should rent for versus what we think the property should rent for and the type of guests that we should allow or anything like that. We've found things that really work specifically for the markets that we are in. We're lucky that we are one of the top operators of short-term rentals in the Austin area. And so I would say if someone's considering a management company, finding someone who is local but has a really good footprint on the area is important.
How do I find them?
I mean, Facebook groups is a huge one, to be quite honest. Referrals, like talk to your local real estate agents. They likely know. We get a ton of referrals through other real estate agents, just like to our management company. Mm-hmm. That's really important. But you can also go to cribsconsulting.com if you want to learn more about us. But
well, no, I mean, because we struggled and fired several managers. I wouldn't say fired. We quickly determined that it wasn't a good fit.
Yep.
Because some of them, one of them's a good friend of mine. I wouldn't want to say fired.
Sure.
On camera. But I ended up on Air DNA
Yep.
and went to like management or top host or some segment, and all of a sudden one guy pops out in Rockwall that has like more listings than anyone else. Pick up the phone, Google him, call him, and ended up retaining him because his focus was midterm rentals and corporate housing. And our houses, we didn't want the friction of the Airbnb.
Yeah.
But now, this is, I guess I'm getting free consulting here, but hey, I have you on my show.
Sure.
But now we have this massive historic house in Rockwall that is going to be, it's right off the downtown square. So there's food and entertainment. It's on 3/4 of an acre. We think people will want to have bridal showers and things like that there. How do I find a manager for that?
That's a good question. So if you have a very unique type of property, I actually recommend either you need to outsource that to like hiring an employee of some kind, or you need to figure out how you're going to manage that yourself. We actually help consult people on managing for themselves as well. That's something that we do like in other markets that we don't work in, or like with a lot of my sales clients who they don't want to pay for a property manager, we'll help them manage it for themselves. One very underutilized thing that self-managers don't realize that they can take advantage of is virtual assistants. You can find a virtual assistant in the Philippines is huge, but a lot of times they have very, very good experience in short-term rentals, and even more than you may or I may. They've been doing this for 5, 6, 7 years. We have plenty of virtual assistants that we work with that much experience. And they will basically run your business for you completely virtually. You know, you're there for more of the high level stuff. But if you have like a very unique type property, I would say it might make sense for you to just get a virtual assistant or 2 virtual assistants. We have a day shift and a night shift, and they're very, very inexpensive.
How do you find them? Like a consulting firm, just Fiverr? Like what do we...
I recommend onlinejobs.ph. We actually hired ours direct through other referrals, but onlinejobs.ph, you can actually search for people with specific experience that you're looking for. So like short-term rental type experience. And the beautiful thing about that is if you went and hired a virtual assistant tomorrow with STR experience, they could probably start next day and just start running your properties because they just know that much about all the systems and how to communicate with guests. The only, issues I would say we run into is sometimes there's language barriers, but like we work with them to come up with canned responses, and they do all that for us. And it's a really, really powerful way to automate your business.
So I want to switch before we take a break to cribs.
Yep.
Is this you're in Austin primarily? Where else are you?
We're in Austin, San Antonio, and the Central Texas area, Waco, Temple, those markets. And
okay.
We're branching out into like the coastal markets as well.
So from Central Texas to Florida and California?
Well, we manage remotely. So we do have properties in Florida. We have a property in Oregon that we manage for. But as far as like our full service, we only are in the state of Texas.
Gotcha, understand. So where are you going to take cribs? It sounds like something that happened on accident when someone asked you for a favor. And now, I mean, it's the title block on the video.
Yep.
Where is cribs going in the next couple of years?
So cribs we're going to compound on what we've already built. We just started Cribs Realty Group as well. So we're like hiring agents, and we're getting way like a lot more leads specifically for investors, because we want to become like the go-to investor-friendly agents in the state of Texas. And then from our management company, we're on track we'll probably break over 100 units this year. And so we want to compound more on that, eventually hire like a CEO type person that can operate that for us. But really like our biggest goal is to do more large deals. So we have Cribs acquisitions as well. We just purchased a 14-unit motel deal in Canyon Lake. And we're under negotiations on some other potential boutique motel, boutique hotel, unique experience type of deals. And so we want to do more stuff like that. We have found a really great way to separate ourselves, even with a lot of the saturation that people talk about. The biggest thing is how you run your business and how you design your properties. And we've found a really great way to distinguish ourselves and build up our SEO, and we want to build on that, getting our own properties. And so building up the acquisition side for us is really important. It's a big focus this year.
Very good.
Yeah.
So here we are. Actually, we'll kill that part. I'm going to go take a break. All right, so we're going to take a break, come back for the Money Minute and rapid fire, and then we're going to be out of time. So stick around. We'll be right back.
REI Inc. is a monthly business publication for real estate investors, covering all types of real estate investments and strategies. It is the most comprehensive real estate investment publication on the market. All of the articles are written by the top leaders in the industry, so investors are assured of always getting the best information possible. Each month, REI Inc. also profiles the top companies in the industry and provides insights and data into key regional markets. Along with their sister platforms, the REI Referral Network and Highest Invest, real estate investors have exclusive access to off-market investment opportunities and national acquisition and disposition initiatives. To learn more, visit www.rei-inc.com, where you can also access the REI Referral Network. Also, be sure and visit www.highest-and-vest.com to view the latest exclusive off-market assets with near immediate acceptance decisions and closing strategies. You can also email marketing@rei-referralnetwork.com to request more information.
Welcome back to Uncontested Investing. We're on the final leg with Blake. Blake, I want to just dive right into the Money Minute. 60 seconds, only advice an entrepreneur is going to get all month. It's got to be your best stuff. You ready?
Yes.
Go.
I would say right now, entrepreneurs, business people, real estate professionals really need to be focusing on building out one thing. A lot of times, I would say people get led away, and they will build watered down businesses because they'll try to do too many things at once. That's something that we've struggled with for a long time. And I would say you'll find your biggest return will be if you can focus all your time, energy, money on one business, one goal, and then you can expand from there. For us, we built out the management company, we built out the sales, we focused on that for a long time. Eventually we realized that we could do more within that, but we had our solid operations and those things from the get-go, and we had the people in place, and that allowed us to expand. So I would say people need to be focusing on one thing, especially right now in this weird time. I would just say double down on one thing, go super hard, and don't get distracted.
So I think you just summed up my 2022, right? It's for the previous 3 or 4 years, I'd really just been the guy sitting at home eating barbecue and running his little real estate business, wholesaling, buy and holds, that kind of thing, really taking it easy. And then I joined as the executive director of RCN, and all of a sudden I'm on the road, I'm on conference calls, I'm on Zooms, I'm hosting podcasts, and my real estate investment sales team is calling me nonstop like, we really need to know if you want to sell that house, and if so, like, we need a asking price, right?
Yeah.
Like something as simple as an asking price. Sometimes they'd have to wait a week, right? And it added friction, and it slowed down the business and ultimately made it less profitable. So I want to ask you about decorating, short-term rentals, student housing, etc.
Sure.
I feel like my wife has overcomplicated it and then made it to where cleaners just, like, it's all the throw pillows and all that. Do you have any advice on like decorating these houses?
Yes. So there's 3 types of designers in the real estate world. You have stagers, you have interior designers, and you have hospitality designers. They all play a specific purpose. They're all important in the world of real estate. However, the reason there's a distinct difference between an interior designer and a hospitality designer is because there's a level of functionality that there has to be with your design, right? So I've walked into Airbnbs or short-term rentals, and you open the back door and the rug is so thick that you can't open the back door, right? Or you have so much art on the wall that something's always breaking and falling. Or you have the wrong kind of blankets and the cleaners can't turn them over. Just different miscellaneous stuff like that. We've rehabbed, designed, furnished over 40 properties just in the last year. And it's important, I would say, to find someone with that experience, or at least do your research before starting to understand that level of functionality that has to be there. So you do want a really high-end design. You want something that stands out and that you can have that profile photo that like really pops. Like when someone's looking at 20 listings, yours sticks in their mind and makes them want to click. That is all very, very important. It sounds like your wife has that down. But there is a level of functionality that has to be considered. You can't have a ton of throw pillows on the beds like you mentioned, or you have to have the right linens, and you have to have the right kind of towels. All that's very, very important. I could get really into the nitty and gritty, but a lot of the stuff that you can find online.
Well, no, it's how important. So when you talk about that, what I'm hearing is you have to do that so your team can execute.
Yes.
How important is it on how you treat these vendors, these maintenance people, the cleaners, I mean, like, how do you, have you found a secret sauce there?
Yeah, absolutely. Our vendors, our workers, our employees, they are the backbone of our business. Especially from a short-term rental world, your cleaner is your boots on the ground. They're the ones taking care of the property. They're the ones reporting any damages, and so we do make it a very important effort in our business to take very, very good care of our cleaners. We also hold them accountable. So we have a 100-point checklist that all of our cleaners have for each of our properties. They upload photos into our systems after every single turn, things like that. But as far as taking care of them, it is really important. You know, we give them Christmas bonuses, or we'll give them extra tips here and there, just little thank yous, because we also want them faithful to our properties. We have quite a few properties that we operate, and so having cleaners that are loyal to you, and you know, we've had issues to where someone books the property same day, and maybe one cleaner said, "Hey, I'm not gonna be able to clean this property today. It's not gonna be ready," and I have to find another backup cleaner. A lot of that is relationships that we've built. So I'm able to call a cleaner at 8 p.m. Hey, can you please run over there and turn this property? And we've done that several times, and it's because of those relationships that we built, taking care of people. A lot of times I see owners and operators be really, really hard on their cleaners, and it's important to hold them accountable. And there is ways to hold them accountable, but you want to treat them well because they're the ones that are really running your business for you.
What is something that's easy in the short-term rental business that some people think is difficult?
All the systems, I think people overcomplicate it. It's just creating a bunch of checklists. That like literally our entire business is just a bunch of checklists that people have, and they execute that on a daily basis. As long as they can show, hey, this checklist is done. It's really that simple. And a lot of these cleaning checklists, inventory checklists, turnover checklists, damage checklists, all this stuff that we have, we just found online and kind of made it to our own. You know, we just edited it to make it fit for our business. But that stuff's actually very, very simple. Looking back from when we started, we overcomplicated it as well.
Right.
But now that we're really into it, I realize a lot of stuff's very, very simple.
And what is something that's difficult that people think is easy?
Guest communication. That can be very overbearing, and especially if you don't have hospitality experience or like that innate hospitality talent, it can be very difficult knowing how to talk to people, when to respond, how to respond, what words to say, how to say it. All that is very, very important. And it's, you know, when you go to a Marriott hotel and they have like robust training systems, right, with how to communicate to guests, versus, you know, anyone can post up a house on Airbnb. The level of hospitality there is usually very, very different. And so I would say people don't always realize that little touch can be very, very difficult.
We quickly determined that I should not communicate with guests because number one, it's annoying to me. Number two, I don't take the time to thank you so much for your message, and I'm sorry that you're having this and that. I use the talk to text, and then half the words are wrong, and my wife's like, "What?" Yeah. So, all right. So we're going to run out of time here in a minute. If someone wants to get a hold of you or do business with you, what are the ways they can do that?
Our website is cripsconsulting.com. You can learn more about us there. Also, you can find me on social media, Blake Anthony Carter. If you just look that up, you should find me on Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, and you can also email me at blakedoesrealestate@gmail.com.
blakedoesrealestate@gmail.com. So Any parting thoughts or parting shots?
Just to reiterate this, I would say if someone's interested in going into the short-term rental world, either find someone with experience or learn as much as you can about the short-term rental world before you just jump in and try to furnish a house and make it work, because it's a lot more competitive than it used to be.
You never know what you don't know, right?
Yeah.
Well, Blake, thank you for taking the time to drive up here from Austin. I really appreciate it. It means so much to me when people travel in to see us. We're out of time. Thank you for stopping back by. Thank you for listening. Remember, your network is your net worth, and today you've been growing both. We'll see you next week.
Thank you for listening to Uncontested Investing. Questions about today's episode or the podcast? Email podcast@rcncapital.com and make sure to follow REI Inc. magazine on LinkedIn and Facebook, and RCN Capital on Instagram, LinkedIn, and Facebook. See you all next time.